It started like any other warm Sunday morning. The sun filtered through the curtains in slivers of golden light, and the smell of cardamom tea drifted in from the kitchen below. I had just returned home from college for the summer, and everything about home felt slower, softer, more vivid. But nothing prepared me for the moment when everything changed. She lived in the house next door. Everyone in our neighborhood called her Aunty Rena, though she was hardly what you'd expect from the word auntie. Graceful, elegant, always draped in those flowing saris that shimmered like river water under sunlight. She had a quiet confidence about her, always polite, always poised, and always distant. I was 22, and in all those years growing up next door, I had only ever seen her in passing. A wave here, a smile there. But that summer, our story began in the most unexpected way. It was just after noon when my mother asked me to take a small casserole of biryani over to Aunty Rena. "She hasn't been feeling well," Mom said, her voice casual. "Just drop it off and come back." I didn't argue. Honestly, I was curious. I hadn't seen Aunty Rena in weeks, and something about the mystery that always clung to her made my pulse quicken. Her door opened slowly after I knocked. She looked surprised to see me. Her dark hair was loosely tied, a soft cotton sari wrapped around her frame, a little off from its usual perfect arrangement. Her eyes lingered on mine for a second too long before she smiled. "Oh, hello. You've grown up so much," she said softly. "Mom sent this for you," I said, lifting the dish. "She said you weren't feeling well." She stepped aside and opened the door wider. "Come in. I just made some tea. It's too much for one person anyway." I hesitated. It was the first time I'd ever stepped into her home. Everything inside smelled like jasmine and something faintly spicy. Cardamom, maybe. Her house was quiet, neat, filled with little handcrafted things and sunlight bouncing off glass bowls. She poured tea with slow, graceful movements, her gold bangles making soft clinking sounds that matched her calm aura. "So," she said, handing me the cup, "you're done with college?" I nodded. "For the year. Thought I'd spend some time at home before applying for internships." "That's smart," she said, sitting across from me. "The world can wait a bit. It doesn't offer many chances to slow down." We sipped tea in silence for a while. Then, without meaning to, I said, "You don't seem like someone who gets sick." She laughed, a soft, melodic sound. "I rarely do. Just a bit of tiredness lately. Age catching up, I suppose." She didn't look tired to me. If anything, there was a kind of glowing warmth about her that I hadn't noticed before. But maybe that was just my imagination, or maybe I had never looked at her this way before. And then it happened. She stood up to fetch something from the kitchen, and as she turned, her sari's palus slipped from her shoulder and fell. It was a simple thing, really. But in that moment, time seemed to freeze. Her back was partially exposed, the soft fabric clinging to her waist, revealing just enough to make my throat go dry. She didn't notice at first. I could have looked away. I should have. But I didn't. She turned, caught my gaze, and realized. There was a moment, a breath, a pause, an unspoken recognition in her eyes. And then, slowly, she picked the sari back up and rewrapped it around her shoulder with practiced ease. But her expression had changed. The warmth was still there, but now there was something else. A question? A challenge? She walked back to me with the same grace, but her eyes were searching mine now. Not awkwardly, not angrily, but with curiosity. "You've always been a quiet boy," she said softly, settling back into her seat. "But quiet boys notice things, don't they?" I swallowed hard, unsure what to say. The air between us had shifted. The tea was still warm, but the silence had turned electric. "I'm sorry," I finally said, almost in a whisper. She smiled, that same unreadable smile. "Don't be. Some moments reveal more than words ever can." We said little after that. I finished my tea, placed the cup gently down, and stood up to leave. She walked me to the door, her hand brushing my arm as she opened it. "Thank your mother for the food," she said. "And come by again. Maybe next time, you bring the tea." I walked home in silence, my heart hammering against my ribs. Everything looked the same. The dusty street, the parked cars, the kids playing cricket. But I knew something had changed. I didn't know exactly what that moment meant. But I knew I wanted to understand it. And I knew I'd go back. Because that wasn't just any auntie. That was the beginning of something neither of us expected. And it had only just begun. The next few days passed slowly, but her presence lingered in my mind like the scent of her jasmine perfume. Every time I passed by her gate, I found myself glancing at her window, wondering if she was behind the curtains, watching too. I didn't go back right away. Part of me thought maybe I had imagined the tension that passed between us. Maybe it had just been an awkward moment. But another part of me knew better. Her smile, her words, that lingering touch on my arm, it all meant something. On Thursday, I finally gave in to the pull. I brewed some tea, oversweetened like I remembered she liked, and walked across the street, 2 cups in hand. Her door was already half open, as if she'd been expecting me. "That was quicker than I expected," she said, a subtle playfulness in her voice. "Thought I'd return the favor," I said, holding up the tea. She stepped aside and let me in, her eyes scanning my face for something unspoken. She wore a light blue saree this time, the fabric soft and nearly translucent in the sunlight spilling through her windows. Her hair was down, a few strands falling across her face. She looked effortless. We sat close, closer than before, on the cushioned bench by the window. I handed her the tea, and our fingers brushed again. "You remembered," she said quietly. "About the sweetness." "I remember a lot of things now," I replied without thinking. She didn't flinch. In fact, she leaned in slightly, as if daring me to say more. "Do you?" The silence grew thick. I took a sip of my tea, trying to focus on anything but the way her eyes lingered on me. "You've changed," she said at last. "There's a certain boldness in you now. Maybe I've stopped pretending to be the boy next door," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. She laughed, but it wasn't teasing. It was soft and slow, like she was savoring something that had taken years to ripen. The conversation drifted, but the space between us felt tighter with every passing second. We spoke about college, about the heat of the summer, about music and memories. But all the while, our eyes kept returning to each other. Something unsaid passed between us like a secret tide. Then came the moment I couldn't have predicted. She stood and walked to the bookshelf, pulling down a small wooden box. "Let me show you something," she said, motioning me over. Inside were old photographs, sepia-toned images of her as a young woman. Sarees, smiles, scenery from hill stations and city lanes. "That was my life," she said softly. "Before, everything changed." "You look so happy," I murmured. "I was," she replied. "For a while." She turned toward me, and for the first time, I saw the woman behind the grace. The loneliness in her eyes. The ache of years lived behind silence and soft smiles. I reached for the box, and our hands met again. This time, neither of us moved away. "Do you ever miss it?" I asked. She looked up, her face inches from mine. "Every day. But sometimes something new comes along. Something unexpected." Our breath mingled. The distance between us evaporated. And before I could stop myself, I leaned in. It was a kiss, not urgent or desperate, but careful. Reverent. Like we were both afraid to break something delicate. She didn't pull away. Her hand touched my cheek, warm and trembling. When we finally parted, her eyes glistened. "I shouldn't," she whispered. "But you didn't stop me," I said, voice low. She turned away, walking toward the window. Her fingers traced the wooden frame, as if grounding herself. "This is dangerous," she said. "People will talk. They'll judge." I stood behind her, close but not touching. "Let them. I see you, Rena. Not as someone's auntie. Not as a name behind a door. I see you. And I want to know you." She turned slowly. Her hand reached out, found mine. Her voice trembled. "Then don't run away when it gets hard. Promise me that." "I promise." And just like that, something fragile and powerful formed between us. Not just desire, but connection. Trust. A shared loneliness that had found its match. We sat again. No more words. Just quiet glances and shared sips of lukewarm tea. Before I left, she walked me to the door. This time, she didn't let go of my hand right away. "Come tomorrow," she said softly. "We'll talk more. There's still so much I haven't told you." I nodded, because I knew this wasn't just a summer memory. It was the start of something neither of us could ignore. And tomorrow held promises I couldn't wait to unwrap. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. The sunlight felt warmer, like it carried meaning. My hands itched to knock on her door again, to see her smile, to hear her voice. But more than anything, I wanted to understand what we had started. I brought over fresh flowers and a new blend of tea, something fragrant and light. The gate creaked softly as I opened it. Her door wasn't ajar this time. I knocked twice. A pause. Then the door opened, and there she was. Aunty Rena, stood in a soft maroon saree, looking like she hadn't slept much. But her eyes lit up the second they met mine. "You came," she whispered, almost in disbelief. "You asked me to," I replied. She let me in without a word. The air inside her home felt heavier today. Not tense, just full. Full of unspoken thoughts, tangled feelings, and questions waiting to be voiced. We sat together, close but not touching. The tea cooled between us. Last night, it felt like a dream, she said. It wasn't. She gave a small, sad smile. I've lived alone for so long that I forgot how real connection can feel. But I need to be honest with you. I leaned forward. I'm listening. She took a deep breath. When my husband left me years ago, this house became my world. And I built a life within it. A quiet, dignified life. One people respected from afar. But no one ever really saw me, not until you. I do see you. All of you. She reached out, took my hand. That's what scares me. Because if I let this grow, I might forget the walls I built to protect myself. And if I don't, I might lose something beautiful. I held her hand tighter. It doesn't have to be public. Or perfect. It just has to be honest. A long silence followed. Then she stood, walked to her bedroom, and came back holding an old sketchbook. Inside were drawings, dozens of them, of sarees, fabric patterns, jewelry designs. Her hidden world. I used to design clothes, she said. Before marriage, before silence. I was supposed to have a boutique. But life pulled me another way. The pages were stunning. Creative, alive. Why did you stop? Because I believed no one cared about the dreams of a woman over 30. I believed my time had passed. I shook my head. That's not true. You still have time. You still have talent. And if you want, I'll help. I'll be right there. Tears welled up in her eyes. She looked at me not as a boy or a neighbor, but as someone who believed in her. Truly believed. She whispered, You've already changed something inside me. Maybe this summer wasn't about finding someone new. Maybe it was about remembering who I used to be. We sat on the floor for hours, flipping through sketches, sipping now-cold tea, laughing at her old ideas and dreaming new ones. I helped her set up an online account for sharing her designs. Her eyes sparkled as she uploaded the first picture. The next few weeks passed in a rhythm of renewal. We met daily, quietly and carefully. She smiled more. I laughed more. We didn't always talk about love, but it was there, between the moments, inside the respect and encouragement we gave each other. One evening, while walking back from the local market together, she said, I never expected this. You brought back something in me I thought was lost. And you made me feel like a man, not a boy. Not just someone passing through. She paused at her gate, looking up at the fading sun. I think it's time people see me again, not as the lonely auntie behind a saree, but as a woman with a voice. Then let them see, I said. We didn't kiss that night. We didn't need to. We simply stood together in quiet understanding. That summer came to an end, and so did our daily visits. I returned to college. She launched her online boutique. We still talk, less often, more meaningfully. Sometimes we share a smile across the road. Sometimes a message late at night. We didn't label what we had. We didn't need to. Because the truth is, not all love stories need to end in forever. Some are meant to awaken, to heal, to remind us of who we are. And in that sense, our story was complete. Moral asterisk. Not every deep connection must be defined by romance. Sometimes the most meaningful relationships are the ones that teach us how to live again, how to feel seen, how to dream, and how to let go with grace. Love doesn't always stay, but it always leaves something behind. And for both of us, it left strength, confidence, and a memory stitched into the fabric of our lives, soft, delicate, unforgettable.